Welcome to the Jewish Education Experience podcast with your hosts, Yasmina and Ari, who will be uncovering gems of wisdom with Jewish educators from around the world.
To our audience, thank you so much. We really appreciate your support, and we appreciate you sharing our podcast with others also. Please consider supporting our podcast financially by contributing via Zelle, jewisheducationpodcast@gmail.com, or by joining our Patreon community, www.patreon.com/Jewish Education Experience Podcast. And to all of you Jewish educators and students of Jewish education around the world, chizchu ve'imtzu. May you be strengthened and encouraged in your holy endeavors. Our guest today is Ellis Rosenberg, who has been an educator for over 30 years and has taught in Jewish day schools in both Allentown and Harrisburg. And in addition, he also teaches Hebrew school at Ohev Shalom. Hi, Ellis. Welcome to our podcast, and we are very excited that you're here with us today, and thank you.
And all of that's in Pennsylvania. I just want to point that out. You know, we have listeners all over the world. So,
Allentown and Harrisburg, both in Pennsylvania. So, Ari, Yasmina, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
We're pretty excited to uncover these gems from you, sir.
Definitely. All right. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and actually how you began your educational journey?
Okay, so I was educated at the Silver, used to be Yeshiva Academy here in Harrisburg. I went to high school at the Chafetz Chaim Talmudical Academy in Baltimore. Began college at University of Pennsylvania when my father got sick and passed away. I took over the family business. So I actually finished my degree in business administration with a minor in accounting at Elizabethtown University, which is located here in Pennsylvania. I'm married to Annie for a very long time, over 42 years.
Wow, good for you guys.
Yeah, well, that worked. 3 sons, the youngest of whom is married in Israel with our 4 grandchildren. So, how did I get started in the education business? That's a great question. I was trying to think this through as we're talking here. I'm sure that I kind of mentored when I was in junior high school, as it was at the time. And then when I was in high school at TA, I tutored bar mitzvah lessons. And I think that's kind of what whet my appetite for the future. Shortly after Annie and I got married, I began teaching at Harrisburg Hebrew School. I don't remember if there was a position that was open and I applied for it, or if Mr. or Mrs. Lipsky, who were in charge of Harrisburg Hebrew School, called me knowing that I had been doing some teaching on the side. But that's how that began. And if I recall, it was 3 times a week. It was, I think, it was probably Tuesday, Thursday afternoons after school, and Sunday mornings. What happened then? Harrisburg Hebrew School closed, and then I just kind of smoothly transitioned to the same position at Ohev Shalom. And I'm not sure, I think that was either 1980 or 81, and I've been there ever since. When a position opened up, it was still called the Yeshiva. I began part-time there, and as a full-time position shortly thereafter opened up, and our family business was passed on to my younger brother. Then I took the full-time position at the Silver. It was still the Yeshiva Academy back then. And that is it in a nutshell. And here I am all these years later.
Wow, I actually had no idea there was a Harrisburg Hebrew School. Was that made up of kids from the few different synagogues that are here, or?
If I remember correctly, there were no individual temple, synagogue, after-school religious school at the time.
Wow.
The Harrisburg Hebrew School was for anybody whose children wanted a Jewish education, but did not want to put the full day education in the Shiv Academy. So filling a niche there for anybody in the community.
Wow, so interesting.
So are there any educators that you particularly admire?
Actually, the one that I admire most, and even today, and I'm older than dirt, but I go back to my 6th grade Rebbe, Rabbi Pinchas Goldberg.
Wow.
And I still quote him to this day. My younger brother Alan went to this school as well, and he and I still discuss Rabbi Goldberg did this and Rabbi Goldberg said that, and there were a few things. Rabbi Goldberg was also the Limudei Kodesh, the secular studies principal, and there are a few things that really still stand out. Rabbi Goldberg never showed favoritism, whether you were an expert, as it were, in 6th grade with the Talmud or with the laws, customs, or let's say you had a tougher time grasping it. He treated all of the faculty with respect. All students all respected. He was of the opinion that you get what you give as far as respect, and he respected faculty, guests. I treated everybody with total derech eretz, respect. Rabbi Goldberg always had a smile on his face, and one of the things that I remember to this day, if a student asked a question and he would say, Rabbi Goldberg, I have a stupid question, and Rabbi Goldberg would never say that your question was stupid. If he felt that you were sincere and you wanted to know something about Judaism, Judaics, the halacha, the Jewish law, he would take time out to answer you. So he's probably number one on the list.
So do you think that that's a very impressionable age? Like, do you find that obviously because you're on the other end of that now.
Right. I am on the other end of it. But one of the things, I'll tell you a cute story. When I first began teaching at the Shiv Academy, it was 4th grade. And somebody was saying, boy, you have 4th grade. They're really a spirited group. And then a few years later, when I, let's say, was promoted to 7th grade, oh, you're teaching 7th grade. That's a really spirited group.
Yeah.
So all children, all adults actually are impressionable as far as my experiences, both as an educator and as a student.
That's a good point.
Yeah. How do you talk about God, and how might this differ with the various age groups that you teach?
Again, another good question. It's usually within the last probably maybe 12, 15 years, I've been mostly teaching 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. So I'll focus on that, and maybe if we have time, I'll get into something else. But if students either are younger or even as far as maybe not brought up in a traditional household, sometimes I find that I've started with my own personal experience as kind of what I still have in my head. When I was about 6, 7, 8 years old, when we talk about God, we talk about Hashem, I had this image of this, it's probably the same image that everybody else has, of this like huge guy with a long white beard, this old man. And especially when we learned about Passover, Pesach, that God Bizrael the Tiyah with an outstretched arm, I have this whole idea of this like 5-mile long arm reaching out and saving the Jewish people.
Wow.
So then the kids know that they're not alone if they have questions about, well, exactly what is this God or what is Hashem that we're referring to? And then pretty much I'll move forward to, we'll discuss the cycle of life. And we're talking about both with humans and animals, nature. And as often as not, I might mention, does anybody here have a great-grandparent who's no longer alive or something like that? And we'll segue from that into, well, yeah, I might have a baby sister now or a baby brother. other, and that's that whole cycle. And I might even bring in everybody. Most everybody has seen, if not the original Lion King, they've seen the remake of the Lion King, where they talk about the cycle of life, and they see how everything interacts, and we talk about how everything fits, and even as far as human beings, and how we have eyes that see, and the five senses, and that everything is working perfectly within the cycle of life. And it shows that we're going from this long outstretched arm in my imagination to how the hand, so to speak, of Hashem is involved in everything. And then if there are any questions about, well, how do you believe in God? You don't see God. And I said, well, that's where belief in and of itself comes in. If you saw God, then God wouldn't be God. It wouldn't be belief. It would be science. So that's and again, if there are even when I've been at the Sober Academy, and I've taught some of the older classes as well there, but usually there it's more Jewish history class and things like that. But sometimes if I've been in charge of tefillah, of davening, I will tell the kids it's hard in the morning and the afternoon and the evening, for that matter, for the morning, afternoon, and evening services. Sometimes I'll find that I'm halfway through the tefillah, the davening, and how did I get from here to there? Because sometimes it's done by rote, because you don't have God, you don't have Hashem that you see Hashem, and it's a constant challenge. And I admit to the kids, I have that challenge just like you have that challenge, and we'll discuss it. And again, then pretty much on a higher level, we'll talk about how things are created in such a way that it could not have been, if this is what my belief is, and I believe this is what everybody who is usually in the day school or the Hebrew school is. If our belief is that God has created the world as we know it, then there is that belief, because what we see, my understanding, my belief, could not have just been happenstance. And then from there, if there are any other questions, or again, I don't know that well, and I remember asking when I was in Rabbi Goldberg's class, for that matter, well, if God was before and God is now, and God, how was the universe, or where was God before there was God? And there's no answer to that, because God always was. And Adon Olam, in one of the first prayers in the morning, and I guess one of the last prayers at night, on Yomim Tovim, on the holidays, is the Adon Olam. God was, is, will be. So if God were finite, then God wouldn't be God. So. And again, we follow up. If there are any questions, I try to answer to the best of my ability.
Wow. I really like that, because I find sometimes it can be challenging to explain it, especially to kids, and for them to kind of be able to wrap their heads around it. So it's a really interesting way that you do it.
Right. I often have trouble wrapping my brain around it.
Yeah. What do you find to be your biggest challenge that you faced as an educator?
Probably all the way back. The biggest challenge is, and I don't want to sound like, boy, when I was a kid, we walked uphill to school carrying a hot-baked potato, and that was our lunch, and we walked uphill back home as well, blah, blah, blah. But when I went to school, when most of the kids from my generation went to school, usually mom and dad were home, and mom, as often as not, worked in the house. Dad probably went out, and at 6 o'clock he sat down for dinner, and at 7 o'clock you did your homework, and at 8 o'clock you had a bedtime snack, and at 9 o'clock you were in bed. But it doesn't seem to be that way now. So the kids, I hesitate to say that kids are overprogrammed, but I'm going to say kids are overprogrammed. And usually what's happening is the Hebrew / Judaic studies are pushed to the bottom of the list, or they're the first to be deleted from the list. And I'll get, well, yeah, little Joey, I know that he had your homework, but there was softball practice, and then we had swimming, and then we had dinner, and then we had to go out and pick up the dog, and then it was bedtime. And we don't get that reinforcement from home. And that in and of itself is a major challenge that I see.
I definitely agree with that.
So how do you stay motivated as an educator?
Oh, wow. How do I stay motivated? I look at, especially if I'm in the class with the younger students, say 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. I generally, the last number of years, I'm figuring this is not mom and dad's homework. I'd like to have mom and dad be part of it, but I try to get whatever I can across during if it's a 40-minute period, or if it's a morning or afternoon, whatever time is allotted to me, I try to make that connection. And what I've often told colleagues is that 10 years from now or 15 years from now, I don't expect, if I'm teaching Passover, for example, I don't expect the students to remember the 4 terms of Geula, of redemption. Sometimes there's a 5th term added. I don't expect them to remember Hotzeiti, Hitzalti, Lokachti, Goalti, and Hevesi. But I do want them to have that Hinta L'Yid, that piece of Judaism in their heart, that they'll ask themselves, you know what, I don't remember exactly what Mr. R said about why, but I do remember there are 4 cups of wine. Let me go and find out what else we can do to have our Passover Seder, or the Hanukkah celebration, or whatever we were talking about. And I do emphasize Derech Eretz, probably as much as any teacher that I've come across with. And that comes, again, let's go back to Rabbi Goldberg. And I want the kids to understand that it is important to know the halachot, the laws. But it's, as it says, Derech Eretz Kadma LaTorah, which loosely translated, it means respect or honoring others comes even before you learn Torah. And I'm hoping that I can develop that feeling of what is important within the kids. And then, 10 years from now, again, 15, whatever it is, it'll be part of them. So they can look back, for example, and say, you know what, I don't remember those specifics from Mr. R's class, but I remember that it's important to treat others with respect, and that's kind of what a lot of what keeps me going.
Right. So it kind of now I'm wondering, the word education, it's kind of a bit of like an amorphous term. Like, how do you define really even what education is, or Jewish education in particular?
It's more of almost an inculcation and of a way of life. And again, it's more of I don't need the kids to remember details. I don't, obviously I would like, if I'm teaching class Hebrew as a language, as a Lashon, I don't expect them to be 10 years from now to be fluent in Hebrew. Things like that, but I want them to have the feeling that I am a Jewish person. One of the things, I believe it was the Pew study that actually put the numbers together, that I think it's over 60% of Jews marry outside of the faith.
Right.
I feel that if I can burn the importance of living a Jewish life into my students with enough feeling, enough emotion, that hopefully when they're out of my class 10 years, whenever it is, when they get married, they'll have that feeling that, well, they don't want to be part of the breaking of that shalshelet, that 3,500-year-old chain.
Right.
That's, again, kind of what keeps me going.
Wow. Yeah, it's actually really interesting that to prioritize such things over, let's say, Hebrew or, Israel, I know are two other big ones that sometimes people feel like, well, the children above all else should, know Hebrew and should move to, have a love for Israel type thing.
Well, Ari, I hear your point, but I feel that the love of Judaism comes, if that comes first, that's kind of like if you look at a pyramid, you can't build an upside down pyramid. And the love of Judaism is part of your base of the pyramid. And listen, I am as Zionist as they come. Well, maybe not as my son and his wife, who actually live in Israel for the last, since they got married. And that is important. And I've gone to the College for Israel, the Center for Israel Education conference in Atlanta and Emory University, to learn how to teach modern Jewish history. And I have done that, but that's almost like a specialty course. And when I've taught 4th, 5th grade before, we'll have a life in Israel, but it's almost, or even when I've taught Hebrew language, at the Silver Academy, we use the Tel Am curriculum, and a lot of the Tel Am curriculum is based as if you were in Israel. So I transfer, hopefully, some of the love of Israel, Zionism, as we learn how to speak Hebrew. And so, I mean, the love of Israel and Zionism, it's there, certainly, but it's not the base. It's like right above the base of teaching the love for being Jewish.
Right. Yeah, it's a good point too, because like one could argue that the love for Israel or even love for the Hebrew language is kind of stuff that they'll learn just if you're that way, they're going to learn it from you.
Right.
It's harder to teach that, let's say, if you don't feel it. So,
right. So if you don't feel it, there's a book by Rabbi Shalom Hammer, and he talks about his son was I think his son is still in the service in Israel, the IDF, and letters, and he ties it in with the Parshat HaShavua, the weekly Parsha, and the son sent a few emails to dad about some of the people, some of the soldiers, men and women in the IDF, who they're in the IDF as soldiers protecting their country, but it's no different than soldiers in the United States protecting their country. There's no Yahadut, there's no Judaism there. It's the patriotic thing to do. I'm certainly not denigrating what they're doing, but they're doing it for the love of, because it is where they were born, and it has nothing to do with, mom and dad could have been born in Romania and they would be serving in the Romanian army. So you need to inculcate that love of Israel, and not just the love of Judaism, but that comes after you have the broad base of your pyramid, loving Judaism as such.
So what advice would you give to new educators who are just beginning their journey?
If you're getting into the journey just for the paycheck, find something. There are lots of other professions where you can make a whole lot more money, but if you remember, and you have to actually look at it, so it kind of gets lost here. Remember the math formula: to teach is to touch a life forever. Okay. So when a former student approaches me, and I have had this on numerous occasions, and tells you that you're one of the reasons that he became a rabbi,
Wow.
who became more involved in traditional Judaism, that is, I think it's the old Visa commercial. That's priceless.
It is
Right.
priceless.
And you're going to get rewarded in that manner many times more. Don't get me wrong. You can't live on those priceless moments. You need a paycheck, but you're not getting into this for the paycheck. You're getting into it for the love of what you do, and see those rewards. Your former students coming back to you, and I've subbed already at Harrisburg Hebrew High, and years later, and that was only for one or two sessions. And some of the kids have come up to me and said, "Mr. R, do you remember when?" And I'm like, "Well, wait a minute. Well, who is this? And what did I teach?" And it slowly comes back because over the years I've had numerous students, but that's what makes this all worthwhile.
I agree, for
Now,
sure.
would you encourage students to go into this field, like particularly, I guess, the boys?
Boys or girls, for that matter. If there are women who go into the rabbinate now, I don't know that we're going to have a chance to discuss that tonight. But
Might be too controversial. I don't know.
yes, I'm not touching that one. As far as going into education itself, my wife has taught, not as long as I have, but actually I think there's a picture that when the Federation or JCC last year, 2 years ago, I don't remember, had a pictorial history of just JCC Federation happenings. And there was a picture, it must have been the first year that we were married. My wife was teaching at Harrisburg Hebrew School.
Wow.
And she's been at Ohev Shalom probably close to as long as I have, and she's taken off, I think, more time when we've had the 3 boys. But there's nothing the matter with a woman teaching. And some of the teachers, when I was at Silver Yeshiva Academy, Rabbi Silver's wife taught first grade. Not when I was there. She taught, I think, the year before, and then I think she retired to have her one of her kids. But I would, if you can do it, if you have the connection with kids, then I would certainly recommend it to anybody who feels that they have the wherewithal, the emotional connection, and you can make that difference. And you can live on a little less money than say, being a hedge fund guy down on Wall Street. Sure, do it.
Like you mentioned before about, establishing that love of Judaism. How do you think that we can help our students really build a proper Torah foundation?
Wow. I haven't quite figured that out yet. I know that we have to have somehow place more emphasis within Jewish families on the need for a Jewish education. As I alluded to before, it's not the kids' fault that when they come home from school, well, now it's soccer practice, and now it's swimming, and now it's this, and now it's that.
Right.
My father has gone almost 43 years, and I think it was Mark Twain who said, the longer he's gone, the smarter he gets. My father, one of the things my father used to say is, wanting ain't getting. That means just because you want something, that doesn't mean you're going to have to get it. So I think somehow or another, we need within the families, and whether it's through the synagogues and temples, to place more emphasis on the Jewish education, whether it's at the religious school, at some of the temples, or as far as I'm concerned, preferably the Silver Academy or a day school, wherever you are. We have to have the parents. We have to have the parents on board, and I know it's a societal thing that, well, we want our kids to be happy. And if the kids want this and that and this and that and whatever else, and, Hebrew school is last on the list, well, that's how it's going to be. But we, the Jewish people, we are known for 2,000 years as the people of the book. I mean, we need somehow to make sure that we are going to be known as the people of the Jewish book, and re-emphasize the need for Jewish education, because as the Pew study says, and I don't like being this blunt, but we can't finish what Hitler started. And if we don't build ourselves up, there will be, and I know probably from 20 years ago, I think Time magazine had said by the year, I don't remember the year, in the 2020s or 2030s, there will be no Jewish people. We have, thank God, a million times we have proved them wrong because of the again, emphasis and the re-emphasis on Jewish education. And I think that's what we need to do and to push, whether it's through the Federation, and I know in some areas, I think it's San Diego, the Federation covers tuition at day schools. So whether it's the Federation kicking in or with school vouchers, I know that in some of the big cities, the tuition per year per student is over $25,000. And one of the things that, and we sent our kids to a day school for high school, and when my oldest was getting ready to sign up for, he did a gap year in Israel, and I don't remember the specific numbers, but somebody said, well, how are you going to pay for that? Not trying to be smart. And I said, pay for it. Hell, it's cheaper than his senior year of high school was.
Yeah.
And that was truth. And so when you're, if you have kids, say 2 years apart, 3 years apart, and unless you are doing that hedge fund on Wall Street somewhere, you can't afford to send 3 kids or 4 kids to a day school, unless the whole system somehow or another is changed where it's more affordable.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I mean, it is very expensive, and hopefully that's something that will change.
We'll have to bring you back for another episode where we crack that nut.
Yeah, that's a big one.
yeah, it is. Yes, it is.
And also, you mentioned before about, the families and how busy they've been. They run from this activity to that activity, and I'd like to think that now with the situation that we're in with coronavirus, that families have kind of started to take more of a role in their children's education and started to see how important it is. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Well,
school.
I'm teaching at Ohev Shalom this year, and they have decided from day one, the entire 2 semesters, both this semester and the spring semester, will be on Zoom.
Okay.
And I had never taught, probably like everybody else, I had never taught on Zoom. I had done some Zoom classes as a student over the summer. And it's, how is this going to be? How are we going to do it? But then I got to thinking, if we're doing Zoom, then each kid is going to be at home. And I teach 5th graders at Ohev this year. And nobody's going to leave their kid and go out for Starbucks at 9 o'clock in the morning and leave their kid alone. So the kid's going to be on Zoom, and I'm watching what he or she does, and mom or dad are certainly within hearing distance.
Right.
And what I found is that the students are more focused, whether it's because mom or dad is right there, or they kind of see it almost like a one-on-one. They have Mr. Rosenberg, Mr. R in their sights, and they do see on the gallery the other students, but seems to be maybe making a better connection. And what I've seen, some in my classes and some other colleagues have told me, is that they've seen mom or dad sit in and kind of try to pick up something new. in class, and that opportunity would not be there if we are in class. So there's a positive there as well. We miss the social aspect of it, just like everybody does. But it's the, what do they say, the next best thing to being there.
Huh.
For sure.
Well, that's reassuring.
Yeah, that is reassuring. Well, this is a challenging question. What do you see, or how does successful Jewish education look like to you in the future?
I think we're going in the right direction. And as I mentioned earlier, I think we as a people, as a community, we have to try to figure out somehow or another to drop the tuition to manageable dollars and cents. I don't know exactly how they have it set up in Israel. So we can't compare the two. I don't want to use the word socialized education, but I think the difference there is, unless you are at a specific yeshiva over in Israel, that your schooling is covered, even if you go to a religious school. I don't see that happening here, but I would really, like I mentioned earlier, the federations somehow, whether it's an in-kind or dollars and cents, somehow or another, knock the tuition down to more manageable. I think we need to focus on one of the things that we used to do, that parents would, and I don't remember specifics, parents to, let's say, reduce tuition. Mom and or dad would come and serve lunch 3 times a week, or they would run a picnic. I know my father, the school, the Yeshiva Academy, used to have an annual picnic, and that was a moneymaker. But for whoever ran it, the assistants, whoever it was, you'd get X credit. And I don't know, obviously, what the credits were, but I don't see that happening. And some of that might be because parents, as well as the kids, are overly scheduled. But that's a suggestion that I'd like to see, that I think some of the schools in New Jersey are picking up on.
Yeah,
So,
it sounds like that's definitely a big issue. We got to seriously do something about that. Yeah, I think you had some pretty smart answers here. We're pretty blown away.
I listen. Like I said, Ari, I've been doing this since before you were born. So, yeah, I'd like to think I picked up a little bit along the way.
Right. Yeah, it's education's one of those things where it's almost like, thank God there's people like you out there, who know the program and stuff, and it's almost like a good news that it's kind of, you're saying, just like a money issue. We just have to convince people that have money to basically, see the value of Jewish education, and then maybe we can change things.
Right. So if we could, for example, have the Federation look at education as an investment and not a cost.
Right.
And if people could see 10 years from, nobody has a crystal ball. I understand that. But if you see what's happened, use the recent past as a historical lesson, and you'll see that the more that our students, that our children are educated Jewishly, the better it is for them to continue. And again, with that shalshelet, that chain, that 3,500-year-old chain. So it has to be looked at as an investment and not a cost.
Right, for sure.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll, we're looking forward to getting together with you in person soon, and maybe we'll put something together and start with the Federation here. Why not?
There's no place like Harrisburg, and there's no place like, well, almost the present. Maybe we, like you say, sooner rather than later. Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
Well, Ellis, again, we just want to thank you so much for joining us on the podcast here, and we are very honored that you were willing to come on and answer some questions. And
all right, Yasmin, it's been a pleasure. I look forward again to sitting with you guys in the backyard and
Well, we wish you all the best, and hopefully we will see you soon.
All right. Thanks so much for having me. We'll talk soon.
Take care.